Hello, fourth grade. So today we are going to start Robert Indiana's World Wishes. And it's going to be made up of different tints and shades of one color. So we're creating a monochromatic color scheme. Mono means one, chroma means color, so we're going to use one color and create a color scheme, adding white to that color to create tints and black to that color to create shades. So, but to start, we need to draw a four-letter word, and it needs to be a four-letter word that represents our wishes for the world, just like Robert Indiana's wish for the world was love and hope. So in this example, the word is free, and you're going to do block letters that fill up the space with one letter that's turned at a diagonal. So you're going to start with a square white piece of paper. You need to write your name and the day you have art, day A, day B, day C. You're going to flip it over and you're going to fold the paper in half twice. Now I cut this paper so I don't always cut it very straight, so you're just going to have to do your best to kind of line up the edges. But do your best to fold it in half twice equally. Open it back up and use the ruler to trace those crease lines so that you have a nice straight line down the middle. Alright, now within each of these boxes you're going to draw the letter, each letter filling the space. And the letter needs to touch the top and the bottom and the right and the left side of each box. So I want to do the word kind. I want everyone to have kindness in their life. So I'm going to do the word kind. K-I-N-D. And so I need the K to touch the top, the bottom, the right, and the left. So I can do it one of two ways. I can take my pencil and I can lightly print the letter, the K, touching all four sides of the box, just like that. So it touches the top and the bottom. It'll touch the left and the right. So now I trace around it or inside it. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to trace next to this printed letter. And I printed it lightly because I'm going to go back and I'm going to erase it later. And I don't need to do this side of it because I want it to touch the edge of the box or the edge of my paper. So now I'm just going to erase the printed letter. And this is one way that you can use to get your letters to fill that box, because it's really important that they fill the square so that it breaks up the whole space into different shapes. And now my eye will be pretty easy because my eye is just going to go across the top and the bottom and then meet in the middle. So then really the only thing I have to draw is kind of 3/4 of a rectangle on each side. And then I can just erase. Now don't forget to make one of your letters at a diagonal, crooked. So I think I'll do my last letter, the letter D, crooked. So I need to do the letter N. N's and Z's can be a little tricky, but if you print them, it will help you to make sure they fit. So I want this side to be the front of my N, so I'm going to start here and go up. And then here, and basically it seems tricky, but if you think about it, I'm just drawing essentially two triangles to draw the letter N, as long as I'm not doing it diagonal. Alright, and then I'm going to do my D diagonal, so I'm going to print it lightly, and then I go on the outside of it, and then I do the inside of it. And then I print, or erase, I'm sorry, the inside of that letter. Now, you don't have to print the letter if you don't want to, if you know how to do it neatly without, if you know how to make each letter fill the space without printing the letter first, that's fine. Okay, so now you need a black paper under your work, and I forgot to get my black paper this time, so I apologize, but you're going to get a black paper to go under your work. You're going to get a water basin, a paintbrush, a sponge, because we're going to use liquid tempera today, and we want our paintbrush dry. And you're going to pick one color. My color was green, and then white and black. And the first thing I'm going to do is just take the green paint as is with a nice dry paintbrush, and I'm going to paint in some spaces with just green as is. And it's just real random. I'm not going to think it through, just I'm going to try to avoid, excuse me, I'm going to try to avoid making green touch green. But you're going to fill this in all the way, paint nice and neat. Fill in all the white spaces, take your time. You don't want to paint so sloppy that you can't tell where the background is and where the letter is. And it's hard, painting's hard, so you're going to have to take your time. If you have a tiny little area to get into, you have to keep your paintbrush high up on its toes, on the edges. And then if you have a big area to fill in, you can press your paintbrush down a little bit harder to fill in that space a little bit faster. And this is why you need the black paper in your work, because you're painting the whole paper and you're not leaving any edges unpainted. So, and I would prefer you not to paint the table like I am and you have black paper in your work. So I'm going to paint green there. Maybe over here inside the D I'm going to paint some green inside the hole of the D, not the D itself. And not every box has to have green in it, but you could, that could be something that you try, is just to make sure that each box you get a little bit of the first color as is in it. Okay, and then you're gonna mix. I like to start with my tints. So you're gonna I'm gonna mix a tint up. And my first tint is gonna be really light because I'm gonna add a little bit of green to my white, so it's gonna have more white in it than green. So I'm gonna add a little bit of this green over into the white and mix it around. I think I got too much white paint. It's gonna be a little wasteful. I'm not gonna need all this white paint, unfortunately. So I'm not gonna use it all. This part I'm not even gonna mess with. So I'm going to add a little bit of green to my white here, and I'm going to pick a space or two to paint the tent. And I could paint the same tent because I have enough of it somewhere else, or I could add a little bit more green and make my tent a little bit darker and paint that somewhere. Just try not to have the same value of the color, lightness or darkness of that value, touching. So I wouldn't want to paint the same green on the eye, because then it would just kind of all run together and not look different or not look separate. Okay, and then maybe I need more tint. I need a tent maybe in this box. Not every box has to have a tent. Not every box has to have a shade, but if you have it available, you have enough spaces, you might as well do it if you can. And this box doesn't have a tent, so just paint that up here. Now if I look at my paper, that's a lot of shades left over. So I might want to add a little bit more white and paint a tent somewhere else. Maybe I'll paint a tent on my D. So you need to look at your paper as you're working to decide where you're going to put these. And see, it's okay for me to paint this tent next to this tent because it's not the same value. This new tent that I'm painting right now is a much lighter value than that first tent that I painted here. So that should be okay. But I got to be careful because this green is still wet and I've got a little bit on my paintbrush here and it's wanting to drag through this tent here. So I need to be careful that I don't mess that up, mess my D up by dragging some dark green paint through my tent. Okay. Alright, so that's pretty good. So now I'm ready for some shades. So I'm going to rinse my paintbrush off. I did not rinse my paintbrush off before now, did I, 4th grade? I just used a dry paintbrush. I didn't need to rinse it off. So you won't really need your water basin but just one time. Now I'm going to dry my paintbrush off on the sponge and I'm going to make a shade. Now remember, a little bit of black goes a long way. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this black and move it over to the green and make a shade. And I took way too much paint. I'm not going to need all of this. A lot of this is going to get washed right down the sink. So I'm a little disappointed in myself, but I'm going to take this shade and paint that next to this green, and it's a decent change. There's a clear change in value, and that's what I want you to make sure when you're painting your colors. There's a clear difference or a clear change in the value when you're painting one green or whatever color you choose, blue, yellow, orange, whatever, that there's a clear change in value on the two colors that are touching each other. So I'm going to use the same shade maybe on my D down here. This isn't a D, silly. This is an N. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to use this same shade on my N, but I'm kind of running out of that. I need to mix a little bit more of that up, and that's going to be hard to match that exactly. So I'll just have to do my best. And I did not match it exactly. That's much darker. So that's another tricky part when you're doing tints and shades and you're painting in a composition. It's tricky to mix that same color more than once. So before you start painting a color, look at the space that you're going to paint and look and see, do you have enough of that color to paint that amount of paper? Or do you need to mix more of that color before you start? And I should have mixed more of that shade before I moved to paint this letter N. Alright, and so now I can mix some more black over and paint a new shade for my eye here. And I need to paint here and here and just this little smidgen right here, and I need to paint here. But I'm not going to make you watch me do that. I would go through and I would paint these in shades, and I could do all the same shade, or I can mix up some different shades. Maybe I go back and add a little bit of regular green here, and maybe I don't do all the shades, but it's your choice. Then you're going to clean up your paint mess, and this is the first day, is painting. So you'll put this painting on the drying rack, and you'll clean up your paint mess. You'll rinse out your paintbrush, you'll get fresh water in the water basin, you'll rinse your paint tray off in the Alright, so on the second day, 4th grade, you're going to come back and your paper's going to be painted. But you notice that this paper doesn't have that beautiful black outline that really does make your letter stand out. So the way that we get that, once your paint is dry on the second and the last final day, you're going to take a black crayon, and the first thing I want you to trace is the straight lines, because that seems to be the thing that everyone forgets to do. They remember their letters, but they forget to do the straight lines. So please do the straight lines, and then you're going to press hard with the crayon, hopefully without breaking it, and you're going to trace the edges of your letters. And this should help cover up or camouflage any messy painted edges of your letters that you might have. So I want you to take your time and do this as neatly as possible, because this is what's supposed to make the painting clean it up and make it look beautiful. And so if you do this step sloppy, it's just going to continue to look sloppy, because sometimes it's just hard to paint neatly. But to have to know that you have the black crayon that you can go back over any edges that are kind of painted sloppily and fix that and camouflage it and cover it up, that's a great opportunity for you to do that. So take the opportunity and take your time and outline heavily so you get this beautiful black outline. Don't do the black outline sloppy. It just makes your painting look even more sloppy. So slow down, do the black outline nice and neat, and there you have your finished Robert Indiana Wishes for the World Tints and Shades painting. Good job, 4th grade.